what do you call it? Yesterday, I posted this on Twitter. If you can go to my Twitter account, I just kind of want to share with this. Last night, I'm really zooming a little bit more so we can see it. Yeah, go a little lower. So Justin Trudeau's video, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So he says this message here, and I tweeted it out, and I say, why just guns? Nearly 1,900 fatalities last year from car accidents in Canada, while 277 fatalities from guns in the same year. Since you're so concerned about the lives of people, let's get real tough and ban all cars, right? Because that's 7 times the amount of people that died from cars than they did with guns.
Sure.
So the solution isn't to just say, well, you know, let's ban all guns. Okay, fine. So his proposal that he proposes limits on size of magazines. I think it's 5 rounds. Nobody should have more than 5 rounds. Harsher criminal penalties for trafficking guns. Fine. A red flag gun law. Stripping firearm licenses from people involved in domestic violence. Okay, that's kind of what he wants to do. Then if you go above it, and I kind of want to run this by you as well, go a little higher. So I asked the question. I post a video that we had with Catalina Lauf, if you remember when we talked about what happened in San Antonio. Go a little higher, go a little higher, go a little higher. That one right there, click on that one. So I said, okay. So because both sides, they're so emotional. You're not going to take away my guns. You know, you're going to have to go through my M16 if you want to take my gun. How can you be so this? And, you know, and there's no way. Do you not understand? Lives were lost. So I said, okay, perfect. How would you improve or reform our current gun laws in U.S.? Comment below and like the ones you like the most. So I want to kind of read you what some of the people on Twitter said yesterday and just kind of get your view. So first one says, get the mentally ill people the help they need, kind of like what you just talked about. Make constitutional carry the law in all 50 states. You can tell where that guy leans. Repeal the NFA. I think he wanted to say NRA, but maybe he's saying the NFA. Repeal ATF. Okay, go show more replies so we can see it. Give everyone BB guns. He's trying to be funny. Educating our society first. Fine. Mandatory safety training. Takes a few hours, provides a certificate, and send them home with a locking case for the firearm. Doesn't seem unreasonable to train people who are buying guns. Psych meds equals no firearms. I kind of agree with that one. Keep going lower. GTA 5, go, okay. Well, morality, let's see what the next one. First and foremost, I would prohibit big pharma to market directly to consumer. That's a complete different conversation, right? Mental health is the issue, not guns. Goes back to what you're saying. Mental health, not so much. The problem is the ease of accessibility to buy guns because people with mental health will always be there. So let's find a way to stop these people from acting on their evil thoughts. Okay, 6-month wait list. That's a long time. Background checks and national register. This kid planned this for 2 years. How does that change or stop anything? Good argument, counter argument to him. I would say let's revoke every unconstitutional law in 50 states, DC, and territories. Let as many people as want to any place in America conceal carry. Murderers and criminals would soon change their bad habits. What do you think about that? That's an interesting take. I don't think we have a gun law issue. I think we have a law enforcement issue. Any form of gun control is unconstitutional. Abolish all forms of gun laws. Anyways, this keeps going on. Somebody said 25 years old, same age as renting a car. Then the argument back is, well, if an 18-year-old can go to war, why shouldn't an 18-year-old be able to carry a gun? Well, then are we more comfortable with an 18-year-old carrying a gun rather than carrying a beer? Because alcohol is 21 years old in many states, right? So the part here is, both sides seem to be screaming off the top of their lungs on what they want. No one is really willing to sit down and have a conversation about it. Which argument have you seen from the side that is not the conservative side that you've said, I think they do have some kind of a point? Should we increase the age? Should we do a little bit more training before somebody can just buy a gun and leave the place? What should we do to improve some of the issues surrounding guns?
I agree with the idea that if you're getting drug treatment for psychological problems, that should be automatically prohibitive in terms of gun ownership. I agree with people who are guilty of domestic violence. That should restrict firearms ownership. And I'm answering your question because you asked me what solutions have come from the left, okay, that I would agree with. But most solutions from the left I don't agree with. My bias is always to give more freedom to people, not less. I said earlier that I do believe in background checks. I do, providing they're not abused by government. And you always have to suspect government, because the inclination in government, like, for example, in Washington, D.C., where they abuse background checks, and New York City, to the point where they are basically rescinding people's Second Amendment rights. And that's not right. Government has proven itself so greedy of power, and most Americans, the population that is all for gun control and all the rest, they don't understand, or maybe they just don't care, that the Second Amendment is there for a reason. It's not for recreation. It's not for sports and hunting. It's because in the Federalist Papers, when the colonies were convinced to form a federal government with a government in Washington, that we needed an armed citizenry to be the last bastion of defense against tyranny. The Constitution and the Second Amendment that's in there was written by a revolutionary generation. The first battle of the American Revolution was a question of over firearms. The British were going to Lexington and Concord to confiscate the militia's guns and gunpowder and disarm the citizenry so they could be oppressed. And the founders knew that. So this business about Second Amendment rights, being for hunting rights and recreational, that's not why we have a Second Amendment. It's because the people, and we know this not just in our own American Revolution, but, in every tyranny that has arisen in history, they try to disarm the people and make them sheep so that they are powerless against the government. So we need to be extremely protective of the power. I think the gun laws are too restrictive in terms of the types of firearms. Not only should this business about limiting magazines, no. I think you can make a good practical and constitutional case that Americans should be allowed to own firearms that are equivalent to military-grade firearms. Because of that role. Now,
do you think America needs more guns or less guns?
I think it needs more good guns.
What does that mean?
I think it needs more guns so that if it became necessary to have a second American Revolution, the average American would stand a chance. The average sporting rifle or shotgun, do a test sometime and take it out to a firing range and see how many rounds you can put through it before it starts jamming up. You'll find that a sporting rifle, actually can't do sustained fire for very long.
But you're saying that Americans need more militaristic type weapons in average American hands?
Yeah.
For what reason? To fight against the government?
Because I'm increasingly fearful that we're heading toward a tyranny, and that the reason the government wants to confiscate guns and restrict gun ownership is because they want to have a tyranny over us.
There's a faction that says we already have way too many guns here in the United States. I mean, I think we have, Tyler, I think I sent you some of these stats. We have 4% of the world's population. What percentage of the world's guns do you think we have?
I don't know.
Take a guess.
50%?
That's exactly right. We have 4% of the world's population. We have 50% of the world's firearms. You say that we should have more and more militaristic type guns?
In Switzerland.
I'm just stating facts. I'm not like, just giving analysis.
I am saying that. I'm saying I see no reason in a constitutional republic where the people are supposed to be in charge, okay, and that we don't belong to the government. We're not the property of the government. We're supposed to be free, independent people. That we need to have the ability to protect our liberties and protect ourselves from our own government, which has become increasingly intrusive and oppressive, and the trend line is going away from being a constitutional republic to becoming a tyranny. I don't think we're actually a constitutional republic anymore. I think we're currently a tyranny, but we're in the soft phases of tyranny.
But isn't the biggest problem right now protecting innocent kids, not so much the government trying to come after you?
Well, that's certainly the biggest immediate problem because we've had this issue, but I think thinking people have to take a longer view. and it's in addition to protecting our children, and our children, by the way, I think have to be protected from our government too. You know, I am extremely, of course, it's tragic that those children were killed by that person, by that mentally deranged person, but it wasn't the gun that killed those people. It was the public policy the government has followed that has put lunatics like that out in the street, and government has changed the policies so that our situation is more dangerous. I'm very concerned about a government, that thinks that child abuse, institutionalized child abuse, is okay, and that's what we've got when you're teaching kindergartners through third graders, for example, about transsexuality, and having and expecting teachers to educate our children on matters that, when I was growing up, if a stranger in a park came up to you and started talking to you about the things that we encourage our elementary school teachers to talk to our children about, that person would be arrested as a child predator. But we have government sanctioning that and doing that to our children. Is
that really that pervasive of a problem? I get that there's some teachers that do that, but is that sort of a straw man approach that all these kids,
no, it's not,
are being
indoctrinated? Sir, it is not a straw man. It's being done all across the country. Parents all across the country are up in arms and being arrested in school board meetings for trying to protect their children from child abuse.
By the way, if I may, there is way more of that happening than
yes,
the gun issues that we're having. Just so you know, there is not even 10 times more.
There's way more what issues?
There's way more of the teachers trying to influence kids' way of thinking with what he's talking about with transgenderism. There's 100 times more of that happening than the issue with guns. But the government's not putting their attention there. The government's going straight to guns. Let's address guns. Let's not think about the long-term ramifications of shifting the way kids think. We're not thinking about that. We're thinking about the finite war, not the infinite war. There's a big difference between a finite war and an infinite war. So I agree with that part there on what he's saying. Where you're going with this in regards to guns, can you put up that one thing he put up? By the way, you said 4% and 50%. Somebody could say, we are 4% of the world's population, but we are 20% the wealth. Okay, then what do you say about that?
Right. So we're that much freer than the rest of the world because we, unlike the rest of the world, own guns. So the fact that we own 50% of the world's guns, if that's true, I don't know that it is. But let me point out some other things.
We got 5 minutes left. Go ahead.
All right. In Switzerland, every adult male, who is part of the Swiss militia who can serve in the military is required to have an automatic military-grade weapon, an assault rifle, a real assault rifle, in their house. With hundreds of rounds of ammunition, so that if they're called up, that's Switzerland, which has some of the lowest gun crime, so-called gun crime, they phrase it, in the world. In the 19th century, before we had the kind of modern gun laws that we have now, where carrying firearms was very commonplace among people, the crime, the murder rates and the rest were much lower than they are today. It isn't the guns that are causing the crime. It's the culture that's causing the crime, and I think that a lot of this is correlated with the destruction of our culture because of big government and the role that it plays, which is increasingly destructive. Yes, we need to be armed to protect ourselves from an increasingly predatory government, that is frankly not a constitutional republic, as I said before. And why did I say that? That's because in order to have a constitutional republic, you need at least two political parties, both political parties. Everybody has to obey the law and respect the Constitution. I think we cease to be a constitutional republic at least from the first year of the Trump administration, with the Democrat Party engaged in unconstitutional and illegal behavior by bringing false charges against President Trump that he was a Russian agent and that he needed to be invested. They knew that was a lie. They abused the law. They abused the Constitution to undermine a political opponent. And I think the 2020 elections were also stolen, by the Democrat Party. I think anybody who hasn't watched 2,000 Mules should watch it. But I think you don't even have to watch that. Just common sense would tell you that a guy like Biden, who has, I don't know how many times he ran for president, 3 to 4 times, and he never got more than 2% of the vote. Now we're expected to believe that he got more votes than any president in American history. The 2020 elections were stolen. So
many will tell you that that's because Trump was hated that much, were people voting against him than voting for him.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. But watch 2,000 Mules and see what happened.
We had Dinesh on before, but so okay. This article, Rob, Switzerland has one of the highest rates of gun ownership in the world, but little gun-related street crime. So some opponents of gun control hail it as a place where firearms play a positive role in society. However, Swiss gun culture is unique, and guns are more tightly regulated than many assume. Okay, for me, the one part where the right has to use a little bit of, I don't know how, from my standpoint, there is nothing wrong with requiring a little bit of training. There's nothing wrong with give me a 1-day training, 2-day training, where I got to get a sign off, where I got to go to something, where I got to go shoot, or have somebody that's teaching me the basics, a former vet or former military. I don't know. I think just sitting around and saying, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's not this. I would much rather have 100% of people that are on non-meds, non-domestic violence, non-mental issues, 100% of adults have a gun or a weapon that they are trained to use, then have 50% of America that are able to buy guns, and they have no experience to have any kind of weapons, training or how to use it. I'd much rather drive training. My idea is to drive training, drive education, drive being in a community to say, do this, be careful with this. When you're making a left turn with a car, look at this mirror, 10-2. Basic stuff that we learned at 16 years old. Those 10, 20 basic things to teach somebody with guns that you can also tell them, certain things. I think there are some things we can do to improve in that area.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.